it's wonderful that I can actually have this conversation with Wendy, because Wendy is really a hero, or Shiro. I don't know if Shiro is still a word around, because I've seen her, of course, on television. She's a great representative, trade representative, and so it's wonderful that I can actually have this conversation with her. Neil Cross in the last session said that you have to know what the world's best are, and Wendy definitely is one of them. I think in today's conversation we'd like to touch upon several topics. Of course, the keywords are leadership, gender, negotiation, and to some extent the TPP. But before we get into those hard topics, I really wanted to get to know Wendy better as a person. So Wendy, if you can tell us how you became a diplomat and also your career in the USTR.
Well, thank you very much, Claire, and it's a real honor to be here with this year's Asia 21 Young Leaders. I've heard so much about this group, and I'm relatively new to the Asia Society. I've only been with them for a year, but I really look forward to continuing to work not with just this year's class, but all the alumni. And I'm heading our Washington office, so I want to first extend just an open invitation for people to come by and see us when you come to Washington. And hopefully we can encourage you to join some of our programming in Washington. But I'm really, let's turn on. Is that better? But I'm really thrilled to be here. And I'm extremely honored to be on the panel with Claire, because she is just a success story in the Japanese business community. She's extremely modest, but I can tell you, as someone who's worked for years in Japan with the Japanese, to be a woman and to achieve such a high-level position in such an important company like Itochu, you have to be not only incredible, but resilient as well. So it's a real honor. In terms of my career, what I like to tell people is that I ended up I was 1 year with the Asia Society, and then was with the U.S. government for over 30 years. People ask me, was that your career plan when you joined the U.S. government? Is that what you wanted to do? And I can honestly tell you, no, it was not. I joined the government. I thought this would be fun. I'd get a lot of responsibility at a relatively early age. I got to travel a lot. And then I thought I would leave and go to the private sector. But what ended up happening is I had so much fun, and I really enjoyed what I was doing, and I kept getting promoted, so I basically never left. I knew I wanted to leave, though, in recent years, and I promised my boss a few years ago, when he asked me to be his deputy, that I could make a 4-year commitment for the whole Obama term, but I was willing to stay until the conclusion of the TPP negotiations. Well, when I made that commitment, I thought they'd be going on another 6 months or 1 year. 2.5 years later, I ended up leaving. We concluded the TPP negotiations on a Monday, and I ended my 30-year career at USTR on that Friday, and that next Monday I was up in New York with the Asian Society. So that's my career in a nutshell.
Well, thank you so much. In this morning's session, there were talks about leadership moments or career turning points. And some people said, maybe there are no turning points or leadership moments. But in your private life or in your career, have you had any turning points or leadership moments that you can share with us?
Yeah, there's one in particular, and I'm not just saying this because we're in Seoul, Korea, but negotiating the U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement for me was a real turning point in my career. I, at that point, was at the assistant secretary level at the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, and I was just given a lot of responsibility for this negotiation. I think part of the reason I was given a lot of responsibility is that no one thought that we would successfully conclude these talks. So just let Wendy do it. Let her have, let her put all her energies into it. But it's really, you probably will not succeed. So it's not important that more senior level people get involved. And so I gave it everything I got. And at the same time, I kind of struck a chord with the Korean people and the Korean media and became, and I'm trying to be modest here, but I became somewhat of a celebrity here in Korea. When I would go back to the United States, no one would know who I was. But in Korea, people would stop me on the streets and knew who I was because the FTA was such a controversial and such a dramatic negotiation for the Koreans. So through that negotiation, I got a lot of visibility, a lot of responsibility, and then frankly achieved success. And so that really followed me, and subsequently to that, I was promoted and given additional responsibilities. But I want to turn that question on Claire and ask her, how about for you? What was the turning point for you in your career?
I think the turning point for me was when I was about 39. And actually, it's partly because of the Asian Society, too. I think up until that point, I was pretty happy being a lawyer, doing a good job, satisfying our business people. But, being part of the Asian 21 Young Leader sort of made me think that I'm really a leader, that I should be doing something for the public. And in my case, I am a woman, and I saw very few women in Japanese business settings. And I thought that that was actually a very fortunate thing that I was where I was, that I should be doing more for other Japanese women in business settings. So that was definitely a turning point for me.
So the Asian Society, we can take some credit?
Absolutely, absolutely. But can you actually tell us a little bit about how you created credibility? So you mentioned that you became credible, there was a lot of media coverage. So on those two things, how did you build your credibility? Can you actually be a little bit more specific as to what you did?
Yeah, negotiating trade agreements is it's a fun job, but it's also very tough. There are a lot of frustrations, a lot of setbacks. And so to be an effective negotiator, you really need to develop certain skills and certain characteristics to allow you to be successful. And it's not like you just have them all overnight. A lot of them you develop over time by watching people who succeed, but also learning from your failures or learning by mistakes you've made. And I would just emphasize that because I think that's really important, to be a risk taker and to get out of your comfort zone and to do things that, maybe you just don't want to do, but you need to push yourself. I'm sure for many of you in the room, I don't even need to share that with you because the fact you're a part of this program, I think, suggests to me that you've really achieved a lot already. In terms of being an effective negotiator, people always ask me, well, what does it take? What skills and what characteristics do you need to have? And when I go through these, some of these seem to be very kind of self-intuitive or just common sense. For example, one of the most important characteristics of being a good negotiator is to learn how to listen. And for Americans in particular, we're terrible at that. We love to talk, and we love to fill the room with talk. And when you're at a negotiating table, number one, it's very important to listen to your counterpart, to really accord them the respect that you value what they're saying. And second, by listening, very often you can learn a lot. And in my world, my old world of negotiating trade agreements, I give the example. Sometimes we would prepare a proposal at home, and you would know, and you'd be asked to give this to your foreign trading partner, and you knew that they would hate it. There was no way they were going to agree to it. And you thought you knew why they wouldn't like it. When in reality, if you listen sometimes, they didn't like it, that was for sure. But sometimes they didn't like it for a completely different reason. And sometimes that reason wasn't even a problem for us. So if we were able to come up with language to address that problem, they could agree to the proposal. So that's just an example of why listening and according respect is so important. I would also say patience is really key. The TPP negotiations went on for over 5 years. People sometimes wondered what we did all the time. Sometimes I was traveling with people working for me, delegates, and they would be like, why do I even need to go on this trip if nothing's going to happen? And the deal is, yeah, you go through all these, negotiating rounds and months and years maybe when nothing happens. But basically, you're laying the groundwork for that moment when everything's going to happen at once. And typically, trade negotiations, they will end at a last concluding round where a lot of different issues have to be resolved, and it happens over a 48 or 72-hour period where you don't get a lot of sleep, and if you haven't laid all this groundwork on these issues, it's very hard to bring a deal together. I would also say being a problem solver is really important. It's not enough just to say, here's the problem. How are you going to solve it? How are you going to bridge your differences? And that's, another key attribute. So those are just 3 characteristics I would point to that I think over time I was able to develop and excel at those skills, but it was a definite learning curve. And how about for you in your career? Did any of those characteristics, even if you weren't in a trade negotiation?
My profession is a lawyer, so I do contract negotiation. And definitely problem solving is very, very important. Because I think in a contract negotiation setting, your instinct is always to say no to the other side. But really a true lawyer, a true negotiator, is somebody who can come up with solutions that the other side may be able to agree upon. And I think that makes a good lawyer. I've actually seen a very good contract negotiator do such a good job that she was sent flowers by the other side at the time of the closing, and of course she became the lawyers for the other side for the next transaction. So problem solving is a very, very important skill. But your patience, you also mentioned. Patience is one of the 7 virtues, so I have to remember that as well. Neil Cross also in the last session said that you mentioned listening, the importance of listening. And he also mentioned that what is said is also important, but what is not said is something that you have to pay attention to. Now, you also mentioned the media coverage. All these trade negotiations take place in a closed door. And then you have to present to the world through the media what was agreed, what was not agreed. And I wonder how you actually work with the media in portraying the right sort of level of exposure on especially what was not agreed upon. I think that the good news is always good, what was agreed upon, but what was not necessarily agreed upon. How do you work with the media to have the effect that you want?
Right, and that's a great question, and that was a real learning curve. And during, particularly my negotiations with the Koreans and the Japanese, there's so many reporters, and there's so much not only TV press but also written press, and you're in these talks, and a lot of times you agree with your counterpart that you're not going to say what was agreed on, what wasn't agreed to. A lot of times, particularly with Japan and the TPP negotiations, we would both leave the room, have different press briefings, and our line was, we made good progress, but significant gaps remain. And we would just bury that each time, and the reporters got very frustrated with us. I will tell you a story. When I was in Korea, though, and I made a big mistake, and my counterpart was furious. I was asked in a negotiation by the media, well, you've made demands in the services area. Can you give us an example of what you've asked for? So I responded along the lines of, well, one of the things we're seeking is that the Korean market would open and would allow for foreign testing for colleges. So the next day in the Korean press, there was a headline, Cutler asks all Korean students to take the SATs. It's not what I said, it's what they reported. My counterpart had to spend the next week assuring the press that this wasn't asked for, that Korea would never agree to this, and frankly, Korea was just reluctant to agree to anything in the education area. So that's an example. By saying too much, even if the press inaccurately reported it, kind of worked against the ability to make progress, because a lot of times when things are in the media, then they become a lot more difficult to solve.
Thank you. So the subtopic of this conversation is women in a man's world, which actually sounds very, very negative. I was actually thinking that if it read men in a women's world, I think people might be very jealous. But anyway, women in a man's world. It has negative context. But is it really good news, bad news? Can you actually tell us your thought on this?
Yeah, it's not good or bad. It's just the reality of certain situations, and then you have to deal with that. I think as a trade negotiator, I negotiate with a lot of men. And so you would look across the table, and it wouldn't just be my counterpart, there'd be all the men on the right and the left of him. And I do think in the early part of my career when I was younger, I was tested. To see if I knew what I was talking about, could they trick me with some substantive question. I also think I was tested to see if they could make me lose it or make me cry. And I think I succeeded in both tests, and over time, I think the whole issue of gender, maybe it was in the back of their minds, but it was just less important. But I do think, and I don't think it's only negotiations, I think women are tested more in the workplace than men, which leads women to really want to excel. One of the things I really think, and I would be interested in your views, I think women definitely prepare themselves more for either a negotiation or for a job or for a meeting versus men. We can debate that, but if anything, I tell people that I think it's important that you know your stuff, and you don't, as a woman, it's very important to have that command of your knowledge. I also think that a flaw of women in negotiations, and this is something that I've really learned to grow, is to become thick-skinned, not to personalize things. I've been with counterparts in negotiations where they told me that I am the most, unpleasant person to be with. Or being told that, they didn't want to, negotiate with me anymore. I was so unfair. And you just have to learn not to personalize this. They're not talking to Wendy Cutler. They're talking to the U.S. representative from the United States. And, if it's not a negotiating tactic, it may be something they feel now, but they get over it too. But I think women in particular is something we need to get over in the workplace and at the negotiating table. And I'd be interested, is that an experience or a challenge that you faced in your career?
It's definitely one thing that I keep in mind. So when I teach negotiation, of course I use Getting to Yes, the Harvard book on negotiation. And one of the first things that the book says is to separate the people from the issue, which I think is a very, very important thing in whatever negotiation session you are in. But can I just come back to the fact of your gender? So are there situations, in your view, that a negotiation went well because you used some female-specific tactics is not a good word, but approach, strategy?
Are we talking at the negotiating table?
Very nice.
I think being a woman, and not only the negotiating table, but generally in the workplace, can work to your advantage as well. I thought by being a woman, particularly in the trade negotiations I was involved in Asia, made me more unique. And if I had been a man, there'd be a little less interest in me. And I think this really helped media coverage of me and our team. There was a lot more interest that I was a woman. And what they couldn't figure out is I seemed nice and I smiled. But at the same time, they knew from what they were hearing from the other side that I was tough as nails. And so I think I played that a bit, and I think it helped.
Did you receive any media training with respect to what you should wear, how your hairstyle should look?
No, none. Can you tell?
Very, very feminine. And I'm actually saying this because I did take a media training course at Yale, and I was told that I look too feminine. If I was talking law, I should not let my hair down. I shouldn't wear any pearls. And so I was just, wondering if there was any aspect of gender in your sort of media portrayal of yourself that you worked on. Okay. So there are a lot of, negotiation theories, negotiation books on gender negotiation, cultural negotiation. You have actually negotiated quite a bit in foreign countries. What about the cultural side of negotiation? Are there things that you work on or worked on to have the negotiation go more smoothly, let's say in Korea or in Japan or anywhere else involved?
And it's true. I mean, each negotiation I was involved in involving different countries, obviously there are different cultural attributes. and different cultural signals that you need to be aware of. I will admit that being part of the U.S. government, we never got adequate training there. It's not like, oh, now you're going to work with the Japanese and you get a week course on, things you should look for. A lot of it you just learn on the fly. And for, just to give you an example, one huge difference between negotiating the Japanese and the Koreans, with Japanese are just very indirect, okay? So if they don't like something, they'll kind of be across the table and go, this is really difficult. And that's a cue. They're not going to do this. They're just being nice. I've been with bosses where they'll leave a negotiation with the Japanese and they'll say, oh, I think they like this. The door is open. And I'm like, no. What they really meant was, what they were too polite to say, is there's no way that they were going to work with us on that proposal. Now, working with the Koreans was completely different. They gave direct a new meaning. They made it very clear when they hated something you did, they would tell you right at the table. There was no kind of, working around the edges on that. And that was something that was very difficult for me to get used to. And particularly, I think that gets to the whole issue of, trying not to personalize something. So that's, one example. Another example I would give in negotiating, for example, with the Chinese, in some ways it was harder to negotiate with the Chinese because a lot of the Chinese government officials would not go out to meals with you and would not do anything socially with you. And that's really important in negotiating in Asia, as many of you know, and you're developing those relationships. And so even if you're going to dinner, you're not talking about work. It's just an important, another important element in something that's going to help you later on. And I think that's really proved to be a challenge with China because of the fact that, most of the time you spend with them, in the government, with your Chinese counterparts would be in official settings.
That's very interesting because one of the things that I try to be very careful is to not let my personal life known, especially to my business colleagues, because I can speak for some Japanese men, not all Japanese men, but they're very sort of curious about your personal life, and so how do you sort of strike that balance? You want to be personable, but not.
And I didn't mean that I'm sharing my personal life with them, but I'm saying sometimes it's not talking about work. It's talking about what's going on in Japan, or what country did you visit, or for example, I'll tell you one thing. I don't like soccer. I don't understand soccer, but my Japanese counterpart loved these games, and so I would start watching these soccer games and I'd, figure out who won. And or listen to the news after, or read the newspapers. When I met him, I could converse on that issue because it was important to him. So it's more things like that. I'm very reluctant to get into my personal life. With my counterparts, I always think they're going to use it against me. I always laugh because people say, "Oh, if you negotiate, and you're such a good negotiator in your career, when you go home, you must be an awesome negotiator." And my answer was, you know what? Just hang out with my teenage son. He gets everything he wants from me. So he's clearly figured out how to negotiate with Wendy Cutler.
So only women can be mothers, so I'll ask this next question. So, being a mother, do you think that actually helped your negotiation skills in any way?
I do.
Parent.
Yeah, I do, because I work with a lot of people and that have moments where they really act like children. Just one story from a negotiation in Japan, without naming any names. I was across the table from my counterpart. My deputy, who was a man, was with me, and not part of the negotiation. I let my deputy do because he had done the work, and I always think it's really important to empower the people who work for you. Needless to say, he got in a fight with my counterpart to the point where, and I wasn't even paying that much attention, and I heard my counterpart say, "Well, this is unacceptable, you need to apologize." And then my deputy, who was sitting next to me, says, "I'm not apologizing, I didn't do anything wrong." And I'm listening, kind of putting my other papers aside because I'm getting ready for the next topic. And then before I know it, my deputy walks out of the negotiating room, okay? And I'm thinking, okay, I need to follow him, I need to be loyal. And so we go into the other room and he tells me this is unacceptable and he won't go back in that room and he doesn't think I should. Then my counterpart comes out and tells me that this is just a mess and that he's willing to call off the talks the whole week. And then I'm with I think this is getting back to your question, my maternal instincts. Okay, both of you, you're gonna come into a room together and we're gonna work this out. So I get them both in the room and I feel like I'm with two teenagers. Well, he needs to apologize. No, he needs to apologize. And once he apologized, I said, okay, here's the deal. I don't even really understand this issue, but we're gonna go back in the room. I'm gonna apologize on behalf of the U.S. government, and then let's just keep going. And that worked, but I think that showed not only my maternal instincts, because part of it really felt like this was a ridiculous conversation, but I think also that's problem solving. I mean, it sounds so trite, but it's things like that you just on the fly just have to think about. Now, sometimes you wouldn't want to be in that position as a U.S. government official because sometimes apologizing has a lot of significance to it and you have to be really careful because you don't want to be in the newspaper the next day, Cutler apologizes for blah, 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 blah. But this, I felt very comfortable that this was just something we needed to get back to the room and do our work.
So when I watched CNN this morning, one of the headline news was Boris Johnson being very undiplomatic as a diplomat. So in a diplomatic negotiation, how much of it is it a strategy to be undiplomatic?
Well, it's funny, when people in the U.S. government, when they talk about diplomats, they talk more about the State Department than people from the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. We're known for being much more direct and maybe somewhat undiplomatic. But look, you're in the diplomatic world, you need to accord respect. There's certain things you say, there's certain things you don't say, there's certain things you need to be careful about. And that, I think, extends to all diplomats. Of course, we all have our moments, and I've had them, when you say undiplomatic things. And, sometimes you suffer the consequences of that. And here I would just say, being a woman, I think it's all the more important that you learn how to kind of control yourself, control your emotions, be firm, and not be aggressive. And I know that sounds somewhat sexist because men can get angry, or men can say things that women will be called aggressive for saying. But I think that's really important, and I've just kind of accepted that. One of my strategies at the negotiating table would be the angrier my counterpart would get, the quieter I would get, and the lower my voice would go, and the calmer I would be. And I found like this was a way to really give me an advantage, but also to drive my counterpart just crazy. They don't like that. People don't like that. I don't like that in my personal world when I'm fighting with someone. But it's something that I learned, and I think it was quite an effective strategy and diplomatic.
I know that there are a lot of questions from the floor, but before I go to the floor, if I could ask you my last question, which is in the TPP negotiation, reading your blog and your publications, I understand that 1/3 of the negotiators were female. In your view, having that many, or I don't know if that many is the right word, maybe in your view it's still that few, but 1/3 women as part of the negotiation team, how do you think that actually shaped the TPP negotiation?
And that's a good question. I mean, at the ministers' level, there were, for the most part, because this negotiation went on for 5 years, was predominantly males. Out of the 12, it was typically 11 male ministers, 1 female minister. But the actual negotiating level, there were many more female negotiators. I do think, and I've seen this through my career, particularly working with foreign countries, that there is a camaraderie among women, and there was in the TPP and when I worked in negotiations in the WTO, there was a camaraderie with other women. I worked on APEC as well, and in 2011, the United States hosted APEC in the United States, and just by coincidence, out of the 21 economies that are members of APEC, I would say about 7 or 8 were women that year, and that was just a coincidence. And we ended up socially doing stuff together, and with them, you kind of let your hair down more, talked about your family more and challenges. And I found it to be just an incredible experience to be able to work with so many women from different countries where a lot of us had faced similar challenges. I remember a colleague from Singapore, and her kid was a few years younger than my kid. And I always felt when I was calling my son, depending on what age he was, I would get different responses. As soon as he could talk, he just loved talking on the phone. And then I'd call him a year later and it would be like, what did you buy me? Or, what's my present? And then he'd go through a phase, I don't even want to talk to you if you're not home, don't even bother talking to me. And when I shared this experience with other female negotiators who were also traveling a lot, we really shared that. It was a very similar experience. And so I think that there is a camaraderie and there is a bond, and I feel really fortunate to have built bonds, with many women across Asia.